Previously, we had a genealogy, but the people of Israel have finally made it down to Egypt, and so begins the life in Goshen. Genesis 47 and 1. Then Joseph came and told Pharaoh, "My father and my brothers, with their flocks and their herds, and all they own, have come from the land of Canaan, and they are in the land of Goshen." 47 and 2. And from among his brothers he took 5 men and presented them to Pharaoh. In the previous episode, we had this kind of conversation of what they would say when they come to Pharaoh and they said that they were shepherds. So yeah, they could have all been shepherds, but I'm sure in this size of family and everything going on that maybe there was a diversity of roles and they wanted to simplify it in that they were all shepherds, so that's what they're going with. Genesis 47 and 3. And Pharaoh said to his brothers, "What is your occupation?" And they said to Pharaoh, "Your servants are shepherds, both we and our fathers before us." So they are shepherds, and they claim to be descendants of shepherds. So shepherds from shepherds. How wonderful. Genesis 47 and 4. Moreover, they said to Pharaoh, "We have come to sojourn in the land, for your servants have no pasture for our flocks. For the famine is very severe in Canaan. So now we pray you, let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen." 47 and 5. And Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, "Your father and your brothers have come to you." 47 and 6. "The land of Egypt is before you. Make your father and your brothers dwell in the best of the land. Let them live in the land of Goshen. And if you know of any men able among you, put them in charge of my cattle." So we have more conversations with Joseph and Pharaoh, and they bring in some of Joseph's family members, some of the people of his father. Ask them what they're up to or what they do, and they're shepherds, and they've been shepherds for generations. And the Pharaoh discusses which land that they will be able to work in so that they can look after their flocks. And the Pharaoh's also looking for somebody that can look after his cattle. So that's just, it's just kind of like a little bit of a formality. They've discussed this beforehand, and now that they're actually there, they're kind of reiterating it for additional clarification to the people of Joseph's father's family or whatever. Genesis 47 and 7. Then Joseph brought in Jacob, his father, and presented him before Pharaoh. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Jacob is quite old and quite seasoned and has a good relationship with God. And he's been around the block. He's seen some stuff. He knows some things. So this Pharaoh here, he probably seems like a young lad to him in his old age, and he gives him a blessing for he is able to do that as the old man with a good relationship with God, wanting to see Pharaoh be successful. And Pharaoh has looked after his son for years, and he wants to give him thanks for it. Yeah, he was sold into slavery, and he was a slave under the Egyptians, but it was not the will of Jacob for that to be the case. This was the sons that sold him into it. And it was kind of a rough situation, but they did look after him, and they were able to reunite. So he's kind of thanking the Pharaoh, so to say, and also blessing him. Genesis 47 and 8. And Pharaoh asked Jacob, "How old are you?" Genesis 47 and 9. Jacob said to Pharaoh, "The days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130. Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been, and they have not attained to those of the life of my fathers in their pilgrimage." I love this answer that he gives them. Like, I've met a lot of old people. I've talked to a lot of really old people. And a lot of the time, they just kind of have these long-winded answers to questions that have simple answers. It's like, oh, well, the pilgrimage of our fathers, so the multiple generations of, right? And it's like, well, it's just kind of wondering in years or whatever. But he's giving them a long, drawn-out answer. And that's just kind of one of those things that older people do. I mean, they've been around for a while, and they like to tell the stories of what they've been through to where they've gotten, and I think that's what we got going on here a little bit. That Jacob is just such an old man that he doesn't give the straight answer anymore, not to this young whippersnapper of a pharaoh, right? So he's gonna take his time and talk about the generations. Genesis 47:10. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from his presence. I'm sure they talked a little bit more before he just left. It wasn't such a quick, how old are you? And then, he just left. There was probably more details of the story, and probably told Pharaoh, some of his history and some of his background. It would be a waste to be in front of some, like Jacob is old. Like, he is really old. You don't meet people that old that often. I mean, well, I don't think we meet anybody that's 130 these days. But, you meet someone that was like a World War II veteran or whatever. Some of these people, there's not very many of them left. And they know a world that's completely different than the one we know today. So it's just, I'm sure they talked for a little bit. Genesis 47:11. Joseph settled his father and brethren and gave them possession in Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses, Goshen, as Pharaoh commanded. 47:12. And Joseph supplied his father and his brethren and all of his father's household with food according to the needs of their families. So here we have the process of them kind of getting settled in. They get to the right land, they get all settled down, and some food is distributed so that they're able to kind of get started and get going and looking after their flocks and kind of creating the new normal situation now that they are in the land of Egypt. Genesis 47:13. In the course of time there was no food in all the land, for the famine was distressingly severe, so that the land of Egypt and all the land of Canaan hung in doubt and wavered by reason of hunger. Destitution, starvation of the famine. Genesis 47:14. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan in payment for the grain which they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. 47:15. And when the money was exhausted in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us food. Why should we die before your very eyes? For we have no money left." So the famine, it's a prolonged famine, and it has been going on for quite a while. So they were buying food from Joseph, but now they've run out of money, and they still need food, and the famine's not over yet. Things are difficult at the start, and they only get more difficult as the famine goes on. For there is less food left to be purchased, and the purchase price, I'm sure, probably goes up as there's less of it. But what's Joseph to do? Genesis 47:16. Joseph said, "Give up your livestock, and I will give you food in exchange for them, if your money is gone." 47:17. So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and he gave food in exchange for their horses, flocks, cattle, and the herds, and the donkeys. And he supplied them with food in exchange for all their livestock that year. Joseph, not wanting to see the people starve and seeing that they don't have much left, he offered to take in the livestock, that he would take the livestock in exchange for the food that was required for their survival. Genesis 47:18. When that year was ended, they came to Joseph the second year and said to him, "We will not hide from my lord the fact that our money is spent. My lord also has our herds of livestock. There is nothing left in the sight of my lord but our bodies and our lands." 47:19. Why should we perish before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land in exchange for food, and we and our land will be servants to Pharaoh, and give us seed to plant, that we may live and not die, and that the land may not be desolate. This truly is a very severe and intense famine. For after they ran out of food, they sold all their livestock, and after they sold their livestock, they had to sell themselves in order to get food, for they had nothing left to give, nothing in exchange for food. Talk about a consolidation of wealth. Genesis 47:20. And Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for the Egyptians sold every man his field because of the overwhelming severity of the famine faced upon them. The land became Pharaoh's. 47:21. And as for the people, he removed them to cities and practically made slaves of them at their own request, from one end of the borders of Egypt to the other. 47:22. Only the priest land did he not buy, for the priest had a fixed pension from Pharaoh and lived on the amount Pharaoh gave them, so they did not sell their land. Well, this is crazy. So it sounds like the land of Egypt, that it was kind of free at one point and people were just kind of looking after their own individual farms. But after this great famine, the consolidation of wealth, the consolidation of power all came to the hands of Pharaoh. For through Jacob, he acquired so much so fast, and the people were like slaves. Wow, that is just, talk about escalating, an escalating situation. As we know, and as we will find out, that when one individual is given this much power, it will corrupt them. So we'll see what happens later on, because this is just the beginning. This is the Genesis. Genesis 47:23. Then Joseph said to the people, "Behold, I have today bought you and your land for Pharaoh. Now here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land." 47:24. At the harvest time, when you reap the increase, you shall give 1/5 of it to Pharaoh, and 4/5 shall be your own to use for seed for the field, as the food for you and those of your households, and for your little ones. Well, that's what, like a 20% tax that they're going to have to pay now that the Pharaoh, through Joseph, has kind of looked after them, and they're okay with that because, you know, they're alive and they're not dead. But it's just kind of crazy how this situation happened, and how the whole dynamic contrast of the entire society was changed by this great famine, and the power structure and everything there and about. So this is just wild. Genesis 47:25. And they said, "You have saved our lives. Let us find favor in the sight of my Lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants." 47:26. And Joseph made it law under the land of Egypt to this day, that Pharaoh should have the 5th part of the crop. It was the priest's land only which did not become Pharaoh's. Wow, so this was a dynamic change that existed and propagated for an extended period of time. That 5th or 20% for all time is kind of intense. And I mean, you look at taxation. I mean, I'm in Canada, and I'm pretty sure we pay a lot more than 20% tax. So here we go, literal slaves paying less. So make of that what you will. But they're happy. They're happy because they are alive and that they have food to eat. And I guess they have the fields that they are looking after, although they're not
their own field. So I guess it's almost like a form of serfdom as well, right? So it's like they got to look after the land for the Pharaoh. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a weird, funky situation. So yeah, we'll see. Genesis 47:27. And Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen, and they gained possession there and grew and multiplied exceedingly. 47:28. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So Jacob reached the age of 147. So they've been down there a while now. And Jacob, he's starting to get pretty old. I mean, he was pretty old when they came down to Egypt, and now he's even older than he was when he came down there. Genesis 47:29. When the time drew near that Israel must die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, If now I have found favor in your sight, put your hand under my thigh and promise to deal loyally and faithfully with me. Do not bury me, I beg of you, in Egypt. Israel, Jacob, he doesn't want to be buried in Egypt. This is not his land. This is just a place where they're dwelling for a time. This is not the promised land. This is not the land that was promised by God. And he's making his son, he's making Joseph swear to him not to let him be buried there. Bring him back to the promised land and bury him there. Bury him with Abraham in that fancy graveyard area or whatever, in that place that they bought or whatever from the Hittites or whatever it is, right? Like, he doesn't want to be buried down in Egypt. He wants to be in the land, in the promised land, the land that God took him to. Genesis 47:30. But let me lie with my fathers. You shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burying place. And Joseph said, I will do as you have directed. 47:31. Then Jacob said, Swear to me that you will do it. And he swore to him, and Israel bowed himself upon the head of the bed. This may seem like a simple thing, and it may not seem necessary, but for Israel, this is very important. He does not want to be buried in the land of the Egyptians. He wants to be buried with his fathers. And he's making his son swear on that. Joseph is going to look after this. He's going to make sure it happens, that he is not buried in the land of the Egyptians. Although I don't think Joseph's going to escape Egypt. So the descendants of Joseph will look after this. That's how it's going to be done. And we're at the end of the chapter.